Nathan, it's good to have you here, brother.
Thanks for having me. This is an incredible place.
Isn't it really cool?
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, like everywhere you look, you have these like cultural artifacts. And the museum across the street, it's like jam-packed.
Yeah. I mean, you said we're going to go there, right?
Yeah, we'll go check it out.
Right.
After this, we'll go check it out. So we're going to talk about wherever the Spirit takes us,
Okay.
we'll go. But there's a few things I definitely want to get your take on. And the first part would just be what got you into becoming a writer.
Okay. That's an easy story because when I started having kids about 22 years ago, I was a reader and I would take my kids to Barnes & Noble, and of course we had books in the home, we had a library, but I'd go look at new books, and it seems like every book that I saw was wizards or wimps or zombies or vampires, and being a wimpy kid was somehow prized. And I thought, when I was a kid, nobody told me to be wimpy, and I wasn't ever going to be a zombie or vampire in love with another vampire. And I just wondered where the books were that reflected the ethics of hard work and courage and faith and family. And I didn't see those books really being published. So I thought, well, I'll write my own stories for my kids. I'll raise my kids on the classics. We certainly have the Bible, and we have classics that I was going to raise my kids on, but I thought I'll raise them on the values that I was raised with. And so I just kind of rejected a lot of what was being published at the time and said, I'll tell my own stories. And so I picked an age, which was this boy who was 12 to 13 years old, wild or good, and I started telling the stories of my childhood, of farming and ranching and hunting and fishing and camping. The movies and the stories, the John Wayne movies, Jeremiah Johnson, those stories, Old Yeller, Where the Red Fern Grows, and started telling stories like that would produce the kind of kid that wasn't wimpy and wanted to be a wizard, but who was strong and brave and true and tough. And so that's where I started writing Wild or Good.
And what I love is that the spirit for writing began even earlier than that, like growing up in a house of books, right?
Yeah. So our farm ranch was 30 miles from town. And so about once every 2 weeks, we'd go to town to the library, and my mom would say, you could check out as many books as you could carry. And so we'd walk out of there with a big old stack of books. And so our home was filled with books. We didn't have video games. We had a tiny little television, but I had horses, and I had guns, and I had trees, I had all these things. And so we worked hard all day, and then we had books to read. And so I saw my dad reading, and so that influenced me certainly to think this book is really important. We went to church, and our group, the Church of Christ, took the Bible real seriously. Yeah. And so when we had Bible study twice on Sunday and once on Wednesday night, and I mean, we looked at the book and we were real serious about what the Bible said. Sometimes maybe that's not so great, but it did teach me that what's happening in books is really important, and so it put that in me.
I spent probably 15 years reading every single book I could, and read the best of the best, Ulysses, like all of the big books. And it wasn't until I really started diving into the Bible that I encountered a living book.
Yeah.
It's a book that when you pick it up and you're reading, there's a spirit that moves through the room.
Absolutely, yeah.
It changes you when you read it. It improves you. Mm-hmm. And I know you can find little pieces of that in how-to books and all that. But I was really glad to hear you say that. And what's cool is you can see the influence of the Bible on your work without it being right in the front and preaching.
Yeah. Well, anybody that looks at the Bible, the history of the Bible, my bachelor's degree is in Bible. I've got a minor in Greek. So I've taken the Bible really serious on that level. And yeah, there's something different going on there. The history of the Bible, and just in and of itself, anthropologically, is an anomaly. You mentioned Ulysses. I think those old Greek texts, we have at best 25 to 50% of those texts. But the New Testament, we have 98% of it for sure that was written 2,000 years ago. So just that doesn't make any sense. But absolutely, anybody that's a Christian believer would believe that book is very special, for sure. And then how that gets into my books, you can write books that are just for a very specific audience and probably sell to them, like people who like, I don't know, is Parliament, is that a band?
Oh, yeah.
You could write a book, The History of Parliament, and sell it just to Parliament fans, and you would probably sell some things. But if you wrote a book about, their role in rock and roll, you might sell more or appeal to more. And so when you sit down as a novelist, you are writing for an audience, and that's smart, but you want to tell a good story.
Yeah.
And if it's a good story, it's going to attract a whole lot of things, as opposed to just some tiny little group because you put a Christian altar call at the end or something. And so, yes, I hope the books succeed as good literature before they succeed as a Bible lesson, because I don't know that good storytelling starts out in that place. The Bible functions as a good story. There aren't many.
The greatest story
There
ever
aren't
told.
many really good stories in the Bible. Mostly, the Bible is a collection of people doing train wreck things in their life. I mean, there's not many good families in the Bible.
Yeah.
The Bible wasn't written by Christians exactly.
Yeah.
It was written by people who had done some really, really bad, dumb, terrible things, and then they recorded it afterwards. Now, there's certainly the greatest story ever told of a perfect man, but it's not a collection of Hallmark classics. That's not what makes the Bible, and that doesn't necessarily make great literature.
That to me is proof of its veracity.
Yeah.
The fact that it features weak men.
Yeah.
A lot of times, weak men were the authors.
Yeah.
And somehow, you can piece all these disconnected people into a story that is confirmed by each account.
Yeah. Somehow it cross-references itself through 66 books.
It's amazing.
And written over a period of 3,000 years.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
Oh,
There's nobody doing that today. Here's a book written by, I think there's 39 different authors in the Bible, over 66 books, and written over 3,000 years. Yeah, it's an incredible thing.
Do you have a favorite book?
In the Bible, I guess it ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
Job's been pretty important to me.
Job's great.
In my life. Ecclesiastes has been pretty important to me. Just reading the straight dope of the Gospels.
Yeah.
Here's Jesus' life. What do you think of it? Regardless of history and church, just what do you think of this guy Jesus? Those are a well springing up, as Jesus said. Those are the words.
I think the Gospel according to John is the finest piece of writing available to humans.
Yeah, well, that's a high point. Yeah.
I mean, there's humor in there.
Yeah.
There's like the history of humanity told in a really beautiful, creative way.
Yeah, and of course John, sticks out completely from the four Gospels, and it's very unique, written by someone who said, "I'm the guy Jesus loved," and so.
And I'm faster than Peter.
It's very special. You're right.
So from Barnes and Noble,
Yeah.
it's, to succeed as a writer, as a creative in general, you have to have these moments of inspiration along the way, and you have to have a little bit of, I don't want to call it luck, but for you and me, it's like we're being guided.
Yeah.
But tell me what followed after that, when you really started becoming a professional.
So ever since I was a kid, I always said, I've got some books in me. I want to write books someday. And I love books and was reading. And so when I was about 20 years ago, I'm 58, I guess when I was more than, no, I'm not 58, I'm 48. When I was in my late 20s, I met a really famous author in Texas and all over the U.S., John Erickson, who writes Hank the Cowdog. And he was interested in me because I was young and dumb and I could rope his cows and I could ride his horses and I could do ranch work. But also, I was interested in him because he'd sold 10 million books at that time.
Wow.
And I certainly wanted to write. And so in our friendship that was forged in outdoors, sweating and castrating cattle and branding calves and all that, we started talking about books, and he's an intellectual, and he's a man of faith, and he's been married to one woman his whole life and raised good kids. And I said at some point, I want to write books too. And here's a guy that's been.
So you were friends first.
Yeah, we were.
Okay.
We were friends first and cowboying together. And at some point, I said, "Yeah, I want to write books too." And here's a guy who went to Harvard, spent his whole life trying to write a good sentence, and succeeding and failing, and having really good things happen, and then having all the frustrations that a writer goes through. And I flippantly say this, and so his first comment was, "So are you writing?" And I said, "Well, no." so just the arrogance of youth. You think, I'll do something really great when I feel like it.
Yeah.
When you learn you'd get to do something really great after you've worked at it for 20 years.
Yeah.
Or 30 years. If you see somebody on a high mountain, they didn't fall there.
Yeah.
They're on that high mountain because they walked there a little bit at a time. We're in an age where we kind of think, if I'm funny enough and click the right link on YouTube, then I'm going to be real successful. But Glenn Beck didn't wake up yesterday and do this.
Yeah.
He took a bunch of little bitty steps, and it took a long time.
Yeah.
And then eventually you get a little piece of success, and then you don't get to sit on your mountain. You keep taking steps. So anyway, I said that to John, and he said, "Well, are you writing?" And I said, "No." And he's like, "Oh, well, then you're a fool. I'm not going to take you seriously." And so, but that's what a young artist needs.
Yeah.
Like,
definitely.
You don't get to say you're a writer because you say you're going to write a book someday.
Yeah.
And so, the first thing he said, which is everybody says this, but he says, well, you've got to do it every day. You got to do it like it's a job, and you got to be ready to not get paid.
Yeah,
and so
time.
I started doing that. I started writing every day and wasn't worried about getting paid, and begin practicing the craft.
Yeah.
Like a musician would practice the craft, or a videographer would practice the craft, or somebody that makes jeans. You have to practice the craft for for many, many, many years, and then maybe you get to be good at it. And so I did that, and I sent him my first piece, and I thought, I really thought he was going to say, here's a guy that sold 15 million books, has published at this point over 100 books. I thought he was going to say, I can't believe it. You've turned into Will Shakespeare and
yeah.
and Ernest Hemingway.
Oh, man.
In one essay, you've accomplished what Western civilization has been looking for 500 years.
Here's your medal.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Here's your medal.
Pulitzer's calling.
Here's Pulitzer. Here's $5 million. And what he said was, well, your piece was good for a couple sentences, but then you took it out in the pasture and shot it between the eyes.
Oh, man.
And so
Yeah.
that was the greatest thing he could have said.
Definitely.
Because
Definitely.
the young artist, the young creative has to make a decision right there to say either you're an arrogant jerk that doesn't appreciate my genius,
Yeah.
so forget you, or the young artist says, I guess I better work harder.
Yeah.
I guess I need to spend 10,000 more hours at my craft.
For sure.
And so, at that cross section, you either say everybody else is stupid, or you say, I need to spend another 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
And so luckily I said, I guess I'll go spend another 10,000 hours because that guy knows what he's talking about. And so I write and wrote every morning for years and years and years and years. And as you know, you write a lot of absolute drivel garbage.
Oh, definitely.
But if you're not willing to write the garbage, you don't get to the good stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying my stuff is the good stuff.
It is good stuff.
I've been able to do some things, and I'm very thankful for that. But it didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
I worked and I listened and I worked and I listened, and so eventually I'm starting to get to that level of my apprenticeship under a master. And so that's what I've been able to do, and that's why I've been able to do things, because I had a great master that would speak truth to me. And I guess I was willing to listen. That's the one thing I guess I did, is I was willing to listen and
With humility mixed into it.
and not be too arrogant about it.
It's funny because you and I connected immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so cool to see kind of the reverse, like the affirmations of it, because that's what I had as well.
Yeah.
Where I wrote something and I was like, this is the most brilliant thing that's ever been written, and handed it over to somebody who knows a lot better,
Yeah.
who has a lot more experience, and they said, keep trying. I can see maybe that you might have something here.
Yeah.
And then my mantra from there forward was, nobody cares.
Yeah.
But when they did, it was such a beautiful experience for me.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously my girlfriend, now wife, cares, you know, my friends care. And
Yeah.
anybody who's like, wants to pay attention
Yeah.
will try and help me because they see I need help.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. There's almost, like you said, there is kind of a universal aspect to that experience.
Well, you say universal aspect. I'm not into Kung Fu movies. I'm not against Kung Fu movies, but there is a line I saw in a Kung Fu movie once that said, when the apprentice is ready, the master will appear. And so what I think that means is when you're ready to learn, there's a lot of smart people in life that want to help you.
Yeah.
But there's few people that really want to learn, that are willing to, you know, and that master-apprentice relationship, I mean, that's way before university and bachelor's degrees and master's degrees in human history. That's how people always learn things, is you were an apprentice and you said, I'm willing to be an empty cup if you'll pour some of your knowledge into me. And so that's really how humanity has learned, whether we were on some other continent or some other age. You find a master and you have an apprentice, and that apprentice has the right attitude, and the master begins pouring in that wisdom. And so certainly writing is that way. You can learn writing at a university, I guess, but you're probably better off to try to find a master who will let you sit at their feet.
Yeah.
And I was lucky to do that. I say this all the time, any praise my books get, any award they get, you know, I don't point to me, I point to that guy taught me.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm just a reflection. The Bible says the son can only do what he sees the father doing.
Yeah.
You know, and that's very true for the master apprentice relationship. And so I've been fortunate. I was given a really great master to learn under.
And there's also the element of, and it exists between colleagues as well, people, you know, honing the same craft.
Yeah.
Iron sharpens iron.
That's exactly right.
You find those people who are in the same frame of mind, and there's the moral aspect to it too.
Yeah.
The people, and I want to say, you know, I picked up Heartwood Mountain.
Yeah.
That was the first one I picked up, which won a Wrangler this for 2024. But it's the 8th book in the series.
Yeah.
Fantastic read. I mean, it's going through it. There are moments of poetry, but not at the cost of like it feels like a river.
Yeah.
As you're reading, it propels you forward, but there are all these like beautiful flourishes along the way, and without being these like, you know, Joyce did like page-long sentences that didn't have any punctuation. There's a lot of order here.
Yeah.
It's very impressive writing. The other aspect that really I love is that you are truly an outdoorsman.
Well, everything in those books, I could tell you the real story. You know, the novelist is able to grab bits and pieces here and put them together. But in Cowboyhood, there's a scene where Wilder is using the outhouse at a ranch, and he pulls his pants down, and he hears a rattlesnake buzz in the hole, which is a very vulnerable moment, but it's also a really funny moment. And you know, that happened to us at our ranch 4 or 5 years ago, and so that's not outdoor adventure, but it's certainly
I would call that outdoor adventure.
It's outdoor adventure. But yeah, so you know, I've been very fortunate. You know, I grew up in a family. We've had land. We grew up with horses and cattle and fishing and hunting, and so when you do stuff like that, pretty interesting things happen. And so, and I've been able to raise children. You know, so Jack is a little bit of a test dummy. He's there for all these things, and so, you know, I've been very fortunate. So yeah, I mean, they're a reflection of my life for sure. This is on Cowboyhood. This is my old horse, Fancy, who died last year. She was 28 years old, and that's my son Jack in his underwear.
Good job, buddy.
That's, you know, so we took some photographs to send to the artist to base the illustrations on and stuff. So anyway, so yeah, those are right out of my life.
You said Fancy?
Fancy, yes, sir.
Is that who you dedicated this book to?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
it's dedicated.
I was going to ask about that.
That book's dedicated to my horse. And then that's not hokey cowboy folklore. I had her for 28 years.
Yeah.
So I had her longer than I've had my wife. I've been married for 26 years, and I had Fancy for 28. And I'm going to look for Fancy in heaven. And
Yeah.
I'm not a pet worshiper.
Yeah.
But she was a special gift, and so.
Jimmy Stewart had that too. He had the same horse through all his westerns.
He did?
Yeah. Close to 28. I think it was like 25, 26.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Which, speaking of Jimmy Stewart, one of our first connections was one of the best movies of all time.
Oh, absolutely.
The week that I was supposed to come interview you, but my whole family got sick, I released a Wednesday Western that was Liberty Valance.
Yeah.
Which is a special film to you, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a special film in the sense it's a description of all of culture.
Yeah.
So you need the rough man to come into rough wilderness and get it ready for the politicians and the laws.
Yeah.
And there's no divorce of that. You know, we all want to live in a society of laws that makes sense, and we can go home and rest at night without sleeping with our hand on a gun.
Yeah.
But before
unless you want to.
unless we just want to, but we don't get to do that
Yeah.
until the rough men have come in and pacified whatever is going on planet Earth, whether it's people or animals or thunder and lightning. You know, you have to have that happen. And so that movie tells that story. The John Wayne character, Tom Donovan, he's the rough man that's rejectable in many ways, but he's the only guy that can stand up to this ruffian, this brigand. It's not going to be Jimmy Stewart, who's the polished, educated man who wants to be the politician. And I think that's a very important thing to remember in culture. Is that the military? Is that the police? I don't know, on some level, but we have to have, both of those things have to, you know, you don't get to have a government if you don't have the police and the military. You know, that has to come first. We had to whip the British first.
Yeah.
Before we could have government, you know, and so that movie speaks to that in I think very specific terms. And of course, Jimmy Stewart shows up and he's the smooth-handed politician. He gets the girl.
Yeah.
He
steals the girl.
He steals the girl. He gets to have all the rewards. But our heart is always with John Wayne.
Yeah.
Is with the cowboy who did the rough deeds that needed to be done.
Including the most important thing of all, and he didn't get credit for it.
Oh yeah, and actually shooting the bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A very bad guy.
Yeah, that's
Lee
true.
Marvin as a brilliant villain.
Somebody may write in and who's a World War II historian and fight with me over this point, but we think about a guy like Patton.
Yeah.
We had to have Patton to clear out Europe. We had to have a general.
Yeah.
But then what Patton wanted to do was go on into Russia and do everything else. And, you know, people debate, you know, what happened to Patton, but he could never be in government probably.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not to say we hate all the politicians because they're.
He's the Tom Donovan that would be a good senator.
He's the Tom Donovan that wouldn't be a good senator, but we still had to have him.
Yeah.
And so how you make those two things shake hands in civilization is a really hard thing. The Romans struggled with the same thing. Can you have a general as Caesar, or does it have to be a politician? And there's weaknesses and strengths to both those. We're struggling with that in America right now.
Yeah.
You know, who can we have as our CEO? The rough man or the politician?
Yeah.
You know, without naming names, the man who shot Liberty Valance is the question we're facing as a nation in our next, or we have been facing in the last couple of elections, you know. So anyway, yeah, I think it's a brilliant movie.
You should start ghostwriting my Wednesday Westerns, because that commentary was brilliant on the movie. Is Liberty Valance your favorite Western?
Well, no. My favorite Western is Lonesome Dove.
Oh man.
So
yes.
So you know there are
Larry Mercury.
There are a few things where the novel, you know, people say, well, the movie's not as good as the book. Well, obviously, it's like comparing apples to oranges. They're different things.
Especially that book.
But there are some books and films that kind of, they're both phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so Lonesome Dove is a tremendous book. And then, of course, the film is, I don't think there's really ever been anything like it. McMurtry was, he's one of our Texas heroes, and I give him respect, but he was a really weird guy. Who didn't like people, and he didn't like his audience, and I don't know that he liked himself.
No.
Which would make him a classic author in some ways.
Yeah.
But the book is great, and the film is unbelievable.
I do a writers, just gathering of writers in Archer City. We used to do it every year. Every
really?
Summer. Yeah.
How long have you done that?
10 years.
So you were there when McMurtry was alive, and he had all the French bookstores around the whole square.
Yes, those bookstores are fantastic.
Well, yeah. I mean, and you must know the whole story to all that,
Yes.
He resented Archer City his whole life because they didn't have a library as a kid. And so when he got rich, he crammed it down everybody's throat that you're going to like books and you're going to have an entire drugstore full of French fiction in Archer City, which, was just the quirky kind of crazy guy he was.
You know what's funny? The people of Archer City are very literary minded, independent of Larry McMurtry.
Well, that's some of the judgmentalism when
yeah.
a country kid who wasn't good at being a cowboy goes off to college and thinks everybody in my small town is an ignorant hick.
Yeah.
You really don't understand your small town very well. But anyway, I think that's what he wanted to say, both in his writing and a lot of what he said after that. I mean, his first two novels were all about how his small town was a bunch of ignorant, inbred hicks. HUD and The Last Picture Show. He spent a lot of time really trying to run down Archer City.
So the flashing stoplight from Last Picture Show? The hotel we all hold the conference at, I say conference, but it's 15 of us.
This is you and your buddies?
Or
it's something
my
you
mentors.
sell? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Some really, they all knew Larry McMurtry. And this is the same as you. I was lucky to kind of stumble into this.
Interesting.
And then, for me, it was North Texas. For you, it was West Texas.
Yeah.
But the hotel that we all stay in is directly next to that flashing light.
Yeah.
But going back to what you're saying, Larry McMurtry, from what I understand, was very much a mama's boy who watched the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Who heard the stories.
Well, yes, and I have some compassion on that. So I think he's from 3 generations of cowboys, and he had about, 6 uncles. Huh. And in West Texas, in the wrong circumstances, cowboys can be hard, mean, tough people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tough land, it's a tough job, and it can really weed out the people that aren't built for that lifestyle. And I think he felt the brunt of that, and it became the intellectual, which is good. I mean, he knew that he was an in member of that group that then just wanted to write about it. And so, when he wrote Lonesome Dove, his goal was to demythologize the West. Huh. He wanted to make fun of the cowboy. He wanted to say
I didn't know that.
Well, he said that. Yeah, he said that many times. It was to demythologize. It was to tear down John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart. That was the whole point. I mean, he had these 2 old Rangers, one that had a baby with a prostitute, but then he would never fess up to it. I mean, that's the driving novel of the story, and then one who loved prostitutes. And so he was wanting to make fun of these guys, but unfortunately, what's so interesting about that is the source material was greater than his agenda, because all Lonesome Dove, the book and the film did, was made people love cowboys more.
Yeah.
And that frustrated McMurtry. He wrote about it several times, that he didn't, even though he won a Pulitzer, and that book made him forever famous, that it didn't accomplish what he wanted it to do, which I think is kind of beautiful. That the story of the West and the cowboy is that grand that even when a really smart guy tries to tear it down, it still wins.
I love that, because in your writing, it elicits the same feelings that I get from Mercury's fiction of like, it's very colorful, it's in motion constantly. You have these vibrant characters with really complex backstories, but there isn't that sort of, there's none of that messaging or I don't want to say doctrine, but or like, it's not in your face pushing an idea or a theory.
Yeah. Just tell the story.
Yeah.
If you can do that, man, it's hard. Especially when you're a young writer. You think, what's most important about this is I get a good message across. No, it's not. You need to tell a good story.
Yeah.
It needs to succeed as a story first. And so that's something that John taught me over and over again is if it succeeds as a story, as a piece of art, then maybe it might have a message. But it has to be art first. And so just make it art and let that be good enough. And man, that is a hard thing to beat into your brain.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
You know, last night you said you like poetry, to write poetry. It's so easy to make your poetry all about style.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to have this style, I'm going to be really obtuse. Well, you have to communicate something first.
Yeah.
That's the first job, communicate something. And if you'll do that, style will emerge, tone will emerge, but just communicate something, just tell me something. It has to function as language. That's your very first job. In there is a desk with a buffalo skull on it. Okay, that wasn't great, but I did give you something.
Yeah.
I gave you a desk and a buffalo skull. So you can begin to work with that. You can't start with saying, the white death hangs on the planed timber.
Yeah.
You know, you may think you're doing something, but you ain't doing anything.
Yeah.
Just tell me on the desk there was a buffalo skull, and then we can begin to tell a story. And that's true for poetry too. But it takes a long time to learn that.
Yeah.
Because maybe literary professors teach you all these really flashy pieces of style, and you get wowed by them when you're young. If you're a writerly person like yourself, and you're chewing up the James Joyce, as you mentioned, or the Ernest Hemingway, or the Emily Dickinson, and all you get dominated by those flashy little stylistic things, as opposed to just tell the story, and the uniqueness of Kevin Ryan will bubble up eventually. But worry about that last.
And what's fascinating about Hemingway and Joyce is that if you parse it out a little bit more, that's what they're doing.
That's all they're doing.
They're just telling the story.
Yeah, they're being as honest as they possibly can, and over thousands and thousands and thousands of words, those unique little God-given individualities do bubble up in nuance and subtlety. But they're very nuanced in subtlety because they're not doing it on purpose. And yeah, if a writer can get that, if you can let your voice develop organically to the point where it's unique and distinct, well, I mean, you've at least passed the first gate.
Yeah, and it's a tricky gate to pass.
It's tricky.
It's all of these things, each stage. Yeah. And there was a point when I thought, eventually I'll hit a stride that can't be stopped, and I will be a writer, and my growth will. But no, it's like a constant conversion to becoming better and failing and trying things, and they just don't work, or they don't look good or feel good.
And the lucky thing, if you get to be around somebody, and I'm just assuming, like Glenn or like John Erickson, those people aren't people that did one good thing and then they went and sat in their hill. Yeah. Because that don't work for anybody. Nobody gets to do that. You know, you may get to the top of one mountain, but the people that are going to stay there are the people that get up and work every day. Yeah. And I'm assuming Glenn gets up and works hard every day. I know John Erickson gets up and works hard every single day, and he's looking to be better and looking to be better. And and you figure that out at one point. You don't just get to achieve something and go sit on your mountain. You know, you would climb that mountain, and then, well, there's another mountain. Yeah, that one's bigger. I gotta go climb that one too. But you know, that's and that becomes the meaningful life. That you take up your cross and you carry it as an artist, as a writer, as a small business owner, whatever it is. You know.
So I like what you just did there. Where you blended the idea that this pursuit, and it can be any professional pursuit. Yeah. It involves the sort of agony of carrying your cross and the dignity to do it. But there's also this sort of Socratic idea that, or the idea of from Aristotle, that you need to pursue the meaningful life as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what the Greeks were first asking. What is the good life? What is the meaningful life? They figured out some pretty good truth on their own. There's a lot of theories of, did they have the Torah? Did they have that text? And of course, we know the Romans had it, and along comes Jesus, and he tells us what that is, and you know, that's what it is to pick up that cross and say, I've got to face something, but I want to face it with a smile, and I want to do the best I can when I look back at it. And so, yeah, that's what we're all trying to do.
I see that in what I consider to be probably the most joyful book in the Bible, which is the Acts of the Apostles.
Yeah.
Which is like, I mean, there are like, people get stoned, people get beheaded, and Paul, I mean, it ends with Paul facing doom, but there's a certain excitement, there's a joy to it that characterizes everything that you just said.
Yeah. When the Holy Spirit began to run the show, one of the strangest scriptures in the Bible that I really will never understand, well, maybe hopefully I understand it someday, is Christ said, it's better that I leave and the Holy Spirit show up.
Huh.
You know, what is that supposed to mean? You know, if our confession is true that we believe you are the Son of God, the sinless, the one the whole world has been waiting for, and then you say it's better the Holy Spirit show up, then so that happens, you know, Christ leaves and the Holy Spirit shows up, and that's what runs the show in Acts.
Yeah.
Acts is the acts of the Holy Spirit. It's not the apostles. They guys are a bunch of goobers, you know, like you and I would be.
Absolutely. But if we're lucky.
Yeah, if we're lucky to be Holy Spirit. But yeah, so that certainly is true, is the Holy Spirit is enacting something really, really amazing. And, you know, I bet if you look at your life and I look at my life, the really great moments we've had when we came through, you know, I believe that was the Holy Spirit working in us. You know, that
absolutely
most of Nathan Dahlstrom is selfishness and resentment and small-mindedness and stupidity, and I would assume you have stories like that.
Oh, definitely.
But the times that I'm excited about something that happened in my life, or maybe I did something good, I think there was something else going on there.
Yeah.
And you know, that's exciting when I can turn me off and the Holy Spirit can work through me, and that's the excitement of Acts, I guess. I would agree.
Anytime I look away from Christ, I fail.
Yeah.
I'm most myself when I'm in prayer, when I'm at church, and when I'm writing something that it's like, whoa, this isn't good because I've read this, that, and that. Yeah. This is good because, you know, I'm lucky enough to experience the movement of a Holy Spirit.
And maybe you've realized God gives us all gifts and talents.
Yes.
One of the things He gave you was writing, or to be an intellectual, and so when you get to express that, you're expressing God's pleasure, you know, and His blessing.
I love that. That's cool.
That I'm in God's will.
Yeah.
What I'm doing is imperfect, but I feel like it's God's will. You know, and if you can touch that in your life, I mean, hard times are coming.
Oh yeah.
Cancer and car wreck and Alzheimer's, they're coming. But when those things happen, if you can look back in your life and say, you know, at least a couple times I felt like I was in God's will, that I met, it's the idea of vocation, you know, that God put us all here for something. And if you can hit that a couple times, man, that gets you through the hard times into the next life.
Yeah, and it just remembering what John told us, that the darkness can never overcome the light.
Yeah.
And even when you are struck by the tragedies of life, just remembering, like, I am a child of light, and the darkness will not conquer me or overcome me.
Yeah.
So we've gone through craft, I think, from our professional angle.
Yeah.
What do you say to, you know, a 10-year-old, 11, 13, and on up,
Yeah.
who's reading your books and says, "This inspires me to become a writer"? What guidance would you give them?
Well, the first thing is you got to live life. You know, too many people go get graduate degrees and write their serious poetry and write their great American novel. And what have they done? They've been to university.
Yeah.
and they've read a lot of books. And that's good. But you haven't lived any life. You know, you don't know how to deep sea dive or fight fires in Montana or fix race cars on the Indy circuit or Cowboy. You know, you need to go and learn something that you can add to the conversation. Yeah. We don't need any more angsty, broody, you're mad at your parents and you're mad at your government. You know, we don't need any more of that. But you got to go and live life. It takes a long time. Write the whole time, but you got to go live life. So grab your stories by being an active participant in life, not on Facebook, not on Instagram. That's not where your life is happening. But number two is you just got to write every day. You know, read lots of books and, you know, find a way to write every day. You've got to do it as a hobby if you want someone to pay you as a life.
Yeah.
So do it as a hobby for no money, and then someday somebody may pay you $10 for a story.
Yeah.
And then they may pay you $100, but you got to be willing to do it for a long time. The path of the artist, and then learning how to monetize that art, I mean, is astronomically impossible.
Yes.
But it does happen.
Yeah.
And it's a worthy thing, but you've got to start out knowing I'm doing this because I love it. I'm writing because I have to. I'm painting because I have to. I'm writing poetry because I have to. And I want to be good at it, but I'm willing to do that for a very long time while I perfect the craft for somebody to possibly someday pay me some money for it. So.
And a lot of people drop out on a lot of people that you write alongside, and that's not to disparage their personal journeys.
And that's okay. Yeah. I have people, you know, I do some consulting and not really editing, but consulting on manuscripts. And people write me all the time and say, I've written my dad's World War II stories. And I say, fantastic.
Yeah.
You just did the greatest thing you could possibly do for your family, is to get your dad to tell his World War II stories so his great, great, great grandkids will have that manuscript. Well, can I get them published? Probably not, but who cares?
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of really famous people that did get to publish their World War II stories. You probably aren't going to be one of those people, but so what? Writing the Logos is a time machine. You know, is it okay if you make a time machine for your great-great-grandparents or grandkids? Absolutely. Make that time machine and make it as beautiful and as good as possible. Don't worry about getting it published. And I don't go around just discouraging people from publishing, but that's not the only purpose of writing. You know, we have the Logos, which is Jesus, and then we have also the written word, the Rhema, and that's something that polar bear can't do. You know, that's one of the things that distinguishes us from the animals. We can write, we can invent language, and we can articulate our thoughts and ideas, and we can become time machines. His granddad will never know he'll never know what his granddad ever did, you know, and no animal will ever, but we're different than that. We're created in the image of God, and we can write stories down, and we can pass on wisdom, we can pass on knowledge. And so I certainly encourage people to do that all the time, regardless if it's connected to a paycheck or publishing.
So part of that for you specifically, and this is part of what makes your writing not only enjoyable but unique, is that you are telling stories that need to be told. You're offering the story of America in many ways that is increasingly difficult to find, especially in this genre.
Well,
and that's not even necessarily political.
Yeah. The story of America, you might, I don't know. That, of course, that would be a long discussion what we would mean by that. But if it's the story of of hard work and outdoor exploration and family commitment, then I want to tell those stories. I don't know that a lot of people are telling those stories in that way. Our founding fathers, they had this idea, e pluribus unum, which was out of many, one. And publishing today is saying out of one, many. We're doing the opposite.
Yeah.
We've got all these little groups that you need to stick yourself in and identify with, and that makes us incredibly weak, as opposed to e pluribus unum, out of many, one. And so maybe in that sense, my books aren't trying to separate anybody. We're not calling anybody a racist in my books, or saying you shouldn't like your granddad or your church, or we're trying to pull people together, I guess, with the common struggle, which can be in the outdoors, which can be amongst friendships.
And you have troubled characters. I mean, there's tension.
Yeah.
There's a lot of growth.
Two of the books, I spent a large part of my life working with troubled kids at boys' ranches and children's homes in several places, and then I felt like my life's mission from God was to start a boys' ranch called Whetstone Boys Ranch, and I spent 15 years working on that, and two of my best friends are running that boys' ranch in Missouri now. But so there's a foster kid in two of these books, and so the books are articulating his story. What's it like to be a foster kid in America, to have had 10 different foster family placements? Those are the kids I worked with for a long time, and so sometimes literature can tell the stories of those people. And so his name is Corn Dog, and he's a fun story. He's a kid I've known, and 10 different kids over the years, but it articulates what his life has been like, and he meshes up with my character Wilder Good.
So I would love to talk more about Wilder Good. First, I'd like to talk about everything that you just captured there in relation to your work. Is there a model for masculinity or model for boyhood? Is that something that even factors into what you're doing?
A model, well, I think we need models for masculinity and boyhood for sure. Yeah. We probably get in trouble when we start thinking it in specific terms.
Yeah.
Meaning what it looks like on the outside. It looked like one thing on the outside for me, and that was outdoors and horses and cows, but that's not something that's available to most of the world. But I think the hero, the model, we can see that projected in one physical description, but we can find ourselves, whether we're, in a fishing village in the Philippines, or somewhere in South America, or we're in Cincinnati, Ohio, that we can find that in an image. And here's I'll say this: America's great gift to literature is the Western.
Yeah.
The Brits gave us Shakespeare. They gave us the eloquent, poetic play about kings and queens. America was never going to do that. We couldn't give that to anybody.
Yeah.
But certainly we were able to do that. Well, what did America give to literature? We have the Western. You put this one guy in the middle of this crazy, wild landscape, and can he survive? And when he's trying to do that, does he turn evil or good? Mm-hmm. That's what every John Wayne movie is about. That's what every Western is about, is I'm against impossible odds in the outdoors. What type of character is this going to bubble up in me? And so in that sense, these are all Westerns. These books take place in the West, and you would define a Western as a story where the landscape is a character. The landscape is moving the action. The searchers could only happen in the West.
Yes.
You could have a different searchers in New York City, I guess, but it would be a much different novel. So the gift of the Western, it is that, and I hopefully the boys in the books, their ideal character is being forged because they are against big odds, against horses and cattle in wide open spaces.
I love this, the imagery that you just set up there about it can take place in Cincinnati, it can happen in a fishing village in the Philippines. The other part of it to me that is so captivating, and we've said this in a million different ways, but it's so important, is this overlap that you have and offer where seek beauty there's beauty, there's poetry,
Yeah.
and there's also being able to survive in the most brutal aspects of nature.
Yeah. You talked about the ultimate man. I guess anybody that's thought about what kind of man you are and what you're becoming has thought, look for ideals for that. That's what we do with heroes or films or whatever. And we probably have all had that moment. I think the ideal man is someone, I actually have a little deal I'll give you that I've written on that. That I wrote for these boys at Whetstone in Missouri at this boys ranch. Those kids need models, and so I've been collecting, what does that ideal man look like all these years? And there's something to do with the Teddy Roosevelt, with the Winston Churchill, that you had these rough men on the exterior that could hunt and fish and handle weapons and kill you if need be, but yet they were also men of art and writing and learning and literature and spirituality. And so there's this mix of the inner man and the outer man that I think is really good. You could be the pasty-handed professor that just spends all day in stacks of books reading and reading and reading, but you put him in the wilderness and he's going to be dead in an hour. And then you could have the absolute savage that could wrestle a grizzly bear and break 10 horses, but would be illiterate, that neither one of those would be the ideal, but this ideal would be a King David, the warrior poet. We've talked about that in culture for many years. So there's something there that, yes, I've personally thought about as you look to ideals. Jesus Christ is, the ultimate man who is...
It's a pretty good model.
Who is a man of letters, the ultimate intellectual, but you know what his vocation was?
Yeah.
He was a carpenter. He dealt with big chunks of wood in the first century. You know how long it take to make a board out of a tree in the first century without power tools?
Huh.
I bet a long time.
Oh yeah.
I bet weeks. To make that board that a power tool will make in a very short time. And so he was a man that knew wood. And then who did Jesus hang out with? Rough, burly, semi-literate fishermen. Huh. He didn't hang out as his best friends, the priests and rabbis.
Yeah.
He hung out with guys like us who had black fingernails and scarred hands, and probably said some cuss words, and were sunburned and had crow's feet. And so well, we certainly see that in Christ as the ideal man. He developed the inside, and he certainly developed the outside. So anyway, I think that happens in the outdoors. That helps that. And
that dynamic is, I feel like you see it very clearly in John 8, and the adulterous woman. Yeah. And then you get to see the Pharisees really starting to ramp up. And then that's the passage, I want to get your opinion on this. What do you think he was writing?
Yeah.
There's no way to know.
Yeah. I've never developed a good opinion to that.
Yeah.
He was writing their sins, He was doodling.
Yeah.
It'd be nice. That'll be one of the best questions. But
that would be nice to know.
It'd be nice to know. That's a key passage in today's world. If somebody is doing wrong, and somebody says we need to go talk to that person about doing wrong, it's easy to say, "Well, who am I to speak? I've done wrong too."
Yeah.
And that is a good point. Because Jesus has said, "Take the plank out of your own eye before you get the speck in your brother's." And that's a good point. But then he did also turn to the woman and said, "Go your way and sin no more."
After they left, and that's where his parting words with her.
And so those are really important things to remember as we deal with our brothers, as we deal with ourselves. Is, just because you're not perfect doesn't mean everybody else, or you need to give yourself a free pass. You're still your responsibility to go your way and sin no more. And Jesus had some teeth.
For sure. And what's so fascinating about John 8 is it ends with the Pharisees throwing stones at Jesus. So it's like, okay, they didn't get the message. They're throwing it at the one person who cannot have stones thrown at him based on the criteria that they just set up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, tell me about Wild or Good as a character, as a philosophy as well. Is that an accurate description?
Well, so we have, I have these little stickers that go with the series, and so the motto is "Be Wilder."
I love that.
So
man.
the idea.
I'll throw this on the screen.
The idea of "Be Wilder" is there's a good kind of wild and a bad kind of wild.
Okay.
And the bad kind of wild is, when your 2-year-old and your 4-year-old are getting to the M&Ms and they're throwing them at each other and get the crayons and write on the wall, and you guys say, stop being wild, because that's bad, that leads to chaos.
Yeah.
And that's certainly true. But Thoreau said, in wilderness is the preservation of the world. And so the flip side is, when you go into wilderness, the wildest place that could be, that's the closest to what God made. It's the closest to the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
And so you say, well, wild isn't bad. Jesus was wild. Where did he go when he was stressed out, whenever he needed to pray? He went into the wilderness.
Yeah.
That's over and over in the Gospels. And so...
and even when he was tested.
Yeah,
in
he
the
was in the wilderness. And so there's a good kind of wild and a bad kind of wild, and the good kind of wild is where we get renewed.
Yeah.
Go and be that wild man that's dangerous. Christianity can get dumbed down to, we're all just real nice youth pastors.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're just friends and we're going to hang out and be buddies. Well, that's not Christianity at all.
Yeah.
That's not who Jesus was at all. That's not who the apostles were at all. They were dangerous, wild men. They were also always good.
Yeah.
They were shooting for goodness, not evil, not chaos. And so in that idea of wild or good is really that perfect man idea, that is a description of Jesus as I conceived it, is he was goodness, but he was a wild goodness. And so I guess that's what I'm shooting for. I think, that would be my model for manhood, is something that is good, but it's also is wild in the sense of how God created this planet, and how I think he created us not to be milquetoast nice guys,
Yeah.
but to be people that were good, but there's a time for roughness in our speech, in our actions. Certainly Jesus personified that.
I like that there is a way to arrive at order through wildness.
Well, that's a
It's paradoxical.
very difficult concept. But
Yeah.
yes, so one of the things Jack and I talk about when we go hunting, we always say when we're driving to the ranch, we say, I wonder what's going to happen this time.
Oh, that's great.
Because whenever you go into nature, into wildness,
Yeah.
I mean, anything can happen. When you drive into the city, granted, some crazy things can happen, but we have lines and we have rules for every single square inch of DFW.
Yeah.
Where you get in the wilderness, and you don't have any of those, so crazy things can happen. That being said, you pull back from the macro, and there's only so many things that can happen with the lizards and the mountain lions and the wild pigs and the deer. And so there's certainly an order to nature. On the micro, I mean, it's crazy and absurd the kind of things that can happen in nature that are inspirational and interesting, but there's an order to everything that's been made. And, like that polar bear, he could show up and rip your face off.
He probably would.
Or he probably would.
Couldn't put up much of a fight.
Yeah. But he might not. You might get to watch him eat a seal. But, there's still going to be an order to polar bears always being polar bears and the cold always being the cold. But you have this wildness that can happen. And, man, that's intoxicating, the outdoors. It's something that the urban life just can't give you.
Yeah. The other thing that we've talked about is I think the difference between do not judge and it's okay to have discernment. So being judgmental versus having discernment.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that gets overlooked in this sort of I don't know, softball or t-ball version of
Yeah.
Christianity that pervades?
I talk to parents all the time and make recommendations to them, and they say, well, I can't force my kids to go to church, or I can't take away their video games or something. And I say, who told you it was wrong to have boundaries? Because boundaries is actually what parenting is.
Yeah.
The opposite of not parenting means there's no boundaries.
Yeah.
And that leads to chaos every single time. And so a lot of people, maybe Christianity parents today, have this idea that no boundaries is somehow the right answer. And that's never been true. Of course I have to have discernment.
Yeah.
My 1-year-old, when I had 1-year-olds, if they got under the kitchen sink, they would want to drink the bottle of bleach. And if I took it away from them, they would cry.
Yeah.
So, well, I clearly have to have discernment and
Yeah,
make
you can't-
judgments
my bad.
about
Here's- that's some bleach.
what is in the bleach. And so that's the job of parenting. And it's
Yeah.
bewildering to me that people want to be more their friend to their kid than actually the parent. But you don't get to be your kid's friend.
Yeah.
Maybe when they're 25 or 26, and there's some really good things there. My dad and I are wonderful friends. But when you're raising them, you have a responsibility to set boundaries and keep those up. And why we've been tricked into apologizing for that as a culture is beyond me. But absolutely, no, we don't apologize for that. And that's our job. What you learn with kids, I know your kids are 2 and 4.
Yeah.
Kids are very, very bad at articulating the good things you've done for them
Yeah. Huh.
until they hit 28.
Okay. That's
29.
That's the, okay.
I mean,
I'll
it's a
keep that in mind.
long time.
Yeah.
But trust me, when you're doing good things for them, it's soaking in.
Yeah.
It's making a huge difference. And working with Boys Ranch kids all these years, kids in the street in New York City from the worst backgrounds ever, those kids don't have the prefrontal formations to articulate, man, what you did for me just saved my life. Thank you. They can't tell you that for 10 years.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you quit.
Yeah.
As a parent, you keep putting out the good stuff, not because you're getting good feedback, because it's your job to put out the good stuff. And you keep doing that for a long time. The short term, you don't get the big payback, but the long term is there. Books and literature and society has delivered that information to us.
So you and I could spend hours and hours and hours. We have to wrap up, unfortunately. And I think over the years, we are going to spend hours and hours talking about a lot of these ideas. Is there anything I should have asked that I didn't ask, or anything that?
No, it's been great. You've hit all the big things. You know, we're trying to make good stories. A story should nourish.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
You know, if you eat a delicious meal that has all the different pieces and was put together with love, prepared properly, you walk away and you are better after that.
Yeah.
And so stories should do that same thing. They should never damage us. If somebody is selling bad meals that damage people, they should go out of business.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily true today. People are making jagged art and selling jagged art. What I'd like to do is make nourishing meals for children that make them better when they leave. They entertain as art, and then hopefully there's some subtle, nuanced themes that arise about masculinity, about femininity, about what it looks like to be a man. How do I interface with the world? Hopefully all those things happen, and it's nourishing. Children's literature particularly should be nourishing. Because a children's book, as you know, you probably had a favorite book as a kid.
Yep.
You read that 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
It becomes a piece of who you are.
For sure.
The way Robinson Crusoe became a piece of me, and some Louis L'Amour novels became a piece of me. And so we should be very careful what we put into children's books.
Yeah.
And what goes in young developing minds. So hopefully that's what I'm trying to do.
Where should people start with your work?
Well, they can really start anywhere. The first book is the shortest book, and so they could start there. The elk hunt. But it really doesn't matter. you know, it's your money, and if you want more reading, then get one of the later books. They're a little bit longer, but they're all nourishing for your children, and a lot of adults read them. It's not written in dumbed down language.
Not at all.
Some middle grade is, you know, there's a set vocabulary the editor kind of forces you to work with, and in these books I use big words and big ideas. They're just not 350 pages like an adult novel would be.
Nathan, it's a pleasure, my brother.
Thanks, man.
It's been
Thanks
great.
for having me. This was great.